Frameworks, The Price of Delusion, Chapter 2, Part 2. The two Secret Service men inside the room then motioned the General and Sergeant Templeton to sign in. One of them said as they motioned, "Over here, General. Please sign in for your 3M242 badges." It was a security requirement that lifted one up to the second highest classification level of security clearance. The highest level of security clearance was reserved for only the top 12 men in the Pentagon that directly interacted with the Secretary of Defense and the President on a daily basis. They were also in constant communication with the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the CIA. The General replied, "Tell the boys in the war room not to leave me out of their fun extracurricular activities tonight." The two Secret Service agents began to smile back at him cynically. "And who is this, General?" asked Thomas. "Oh, yes, him. Let me explain. This is," he said empathetically, "Sergeant First Class Templeton. He's to remain with me now as my personal assistant." Sergeant Templeton looked at the General both in surprise and bewilderment. He unconsciously set the two bags down on the floor for a moment as a result of it. He was surprised because the General was assigning him as his personal assistant. He was further astonished because of his being designated as Sergeant First Class. This is because normally one would have to be promoted to a Staff Sergeant first before they got promoted to be a Sergeant First Class. This meant he was jumping up 2 steps in rank instead of 1. The General looked at the newly promoted Sergeant First Class apologetically. With a small grin residing under his thick gray mustache, he said, "It's the only way I could get you in here. I've been wanting you as my personal assistant for a while now, and so this is the way it's going to be." Sergeant First Class Templeton cautiously replied, "Okay, sir, and thank you, sir." For the first time, Templeton began to appreciate what it meant to be working under authority. "Okay, Sergeant First Class Templeton, sign in here, please," said Thomas, the Secret Service agent. He then began to recite his security clearance expectations to Sergeant Templeton in a strong, authoritative tone. "Sergeant First Class Templeton, you've been granted the clearance to the second highest grade of secrecy and classification at the Pentagon. Do you understand that everything you see and hear remains under the strictest confidentiality? This means what you see and hear remains with us and with these people in the room and no one else. That includes friends, family, or other colleagues." Sergeant Templeton was about to respond to this, but Thomas continued, "Do you further understand that if this confidentiality and secrecy is broken, and you are found out, you will be subject to both federal and military law that is punishable by court-martial, imprisonment, and up to even death, depending on the severity of such a breach? Do you fully understand the scope of these responsibilities and charges that have been placed upon you?" concluded Thomas. This whole security clearance disclosure brought the shock level in Sergeant First Class Templeton to about as much as he could bear. He almost did not know how to react. He paused with a drop of sweat beating up on his head as that sick feeling began to reemerge in his gut. Struggling to maintain his composure, he managed to say, "I do." "Okay, Sergeant," said Thomas. "You may take your clearance badge and find yourself a seat with the others." Sergeant Templeton, with a few nervous shakes in his hand, accepted the badge. He turned with the General and moved to the other side of the room near the meeting table. Sergeant Templeton gathered himself as he went and followed the General until they found their way to the head seat of the table, which was really at the back of the room. They both remained standing for a moment. Sergeant Templeton then handed the 2 bags to him. General Gorsuch set his personal bag on the floor under the table while he set his laptop bag on top of the table. He left his laptop bag closed. Sergeant Templeton then found a seat next to the General. As a result of this action, he was now sitting directly adjacent to the Major as well, who was wielding his lit cigar. Sergeant Templeton situated himself quickly in his chair and adjusted his lungs to the great amount of secondhand cigar smoke that was present there in the room. Sometimes you just have to take it to get yourself ahead, thought Peppleton as he took in another deep breath of the cigar's aroma. General Corsica looked at everyone panoramically at the table to see if anyone could answer the question that he's about to ask him before he asked it. Everyone remained silent. The general carefully bounced his eyes from face to face as he tried to read between the lines and ascertain what was really going on here. No one said a word as they waited for him to speak and break the mounting needle-like tension that was suddenly rising in the room. The general finally spoke. "So, have we come to a decision?"